No one saw it coming, not a soul, least of all me. A quiet Sunday morning, just another peaceful start to the day, suddenly erupted into a confrontation. My daughter Sarah standing face to face with a man pretending to be a cop, a gun aimed squarely at her head. There she was, Sarah, in her running shoes, sweat drenching her brow. And yet she wore a smirk. It was as if she was toying with him, deciding whether to laugh or dismantle the man in front of her. 5 seconds. That was all it took. 5 seconds for the neighbors to feel the air shift. It all began because the homeowners association thought they could trust a self-styled sheriff with a temper and an ego that could rival his badge. 2 months ago, we'd moved to Cedar Grove Estates, what was supposed to be a serene suburban paradise, with sprawling lawns and wide open spaces. Sarah, a retired Marine Corps instructor, was starting to adjust to civilian life. Morning jogs, quiet days in the garden. I should have known peace was a fragile thing, especially not with Vince Malone in the picture. Cruising around in a dilapidated SUV, fake police decals slapped on the side, his mirrored sunglasses making him look like a bad ripoff from an old action movie. Old Mr. Larson had warned me about him. Over coffee, he'd leaned in, voice low. "Watch Vince," he'd said, shaking his head. "Thinks he's a lawman. Acts like one, too." I brushed it off. I should have listened. That morning, the sky was painted in soft hues of golden pink as Sarah laced up her shoes, preparing for her usual jog along the community trail. I sat on the porch, sipping my coffee, already planning the rest of my day. Then it happened. A screech of tires, yelling. Coffee splashed across the floor as I leapt up, racing toward the sound. A crowd had already gathered at the trailhead, and there stood Sarah, calm as ever, facing off with Vince, who was waving a gun like it was a prop in a B-grade thriller. "Show ID now," he barked, his voice trembling. "You're trespassing. Suspicious." Sarah's eyes locked onto his, cold and calculating. "And if I don't?" she asked, her voice dripping with challenge. His grip tightened on the gun, knuckles white. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones were already out, recording. My heart hammered in my chest, but I knew Sarah. I trusted her training. She was ready. And so was I. Her hands rose just enough to look casual, as though she was no threat. But her posture? Pure dominance. "You sure you want to aim that at me, Vince?" she asked softly, almost mocking. "Sure you want to make a mistake you can never undo?" His hand jerked, but before he could react, Sarah was on him. Swift, precise. She twisted his wrist, popped the magazine, and in an instant, dismantled the gun into useless fragments, scattering them at his feet. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause. Vince stood frozen, staring at the parts as if they'd betrayed him. Sarah wiped her hands clean. "Call your boss," she taunted. "Oh, wait, you don't have one." Sheriff's deputies arrived moments later, shaking Sarah's hand, chuckling at Vince's downfall. But Mrs. Caldwell, the HOA president, wasn't laughing. She swept in, a cloud of perfume around her voice pleading for Sarah not to press charges. "For the community's reputation," she begged. She offered a year of free dues. Sarah smiled, the calmest of expressions, and said she'd think about it. But I knew that smile. It was lethal. She was already plotting. Vince and the HOA thought they had escaped, but they hadn't realized they were standing on the edge of a war. Sarah wasn't one to rush her moves. She was a strategist, patient, calculating. While they played checkers, she was playing chess. After disarming Vince, Sarah resumed her jog, tossing me a grin as she passed. "We're going to have fun with this," she said. I didn't ask. I'd seen that look in her eyes during her Marine days. It was the same glint I'd seen before a calculated strike. For days, she kept things casual, jogging, chatting with neighbors, but she was hunting for intel. Her questions were precise, methodical. "How long has Vince been patrolling? Who's funding him? How are fines issued?" She soon uncovered the truth. Vince wasn't a volunteer. No, he was a shady hire, paid under the table by the HOA with resident dues. No vote, no background check, just a fake badge and an overinflated ego. But Sarah wanted proof. One night we slipped out in the dark, setting up hidden cameras at the trailhead, the clubhouse, and the HOA office. The adrenaline pulsed through us. This felt like a covert operation. Within days, the evidence began to surface. The cameras caught Vince in his true form, bullying a teen cyclist, accusing him of threatening safety. Then he turned his attention to a mother, berating her over birthday balloons, demanding a permit, or threatening a $500 fine. Watching the footage sent a wave of rage through me, but Sarah, she remained ice cold. "This is gold," she said, her fingers moving swiftly to save the clips to her laptop. But she wasn't stopping with Vince. No, Sarah turned her sights on the HOA. Posing as a new, eager resident, she charmed her way into one of their meetings. Over stale donuts, the board spilled their secrets like clockwork. Dues were being funneled straight to Vince's patrol via a bogus beautification fund, money covering everything from his gas to his uniform, even his badge. Then came the night Sarah recorded Mrs. Caldwell scheming. The plan was to bury us under violation notices until we were forced to leave. "Troublemaker," they called Sarah. "Pushover," they muttered about me. But Sarah sat there, smiling across the table, her recorder capturing every damning word. "They think they can bully us," she laughed later, her voice full of contempt. "They have no idea who they're messing with." Sarah wasn't just after Vince. She was targeting the corrupt board, determined to expose them to every neighbor they had silenced with fear. She built her case like a fortress: videos, photos, and even a flowchart linking the dues straight to Vince's pocket. Meanwhile, Vince, convinced he'd scared Sarah, smirked as he cruised past her house. He didn't realize he was walking straight into her trap. Sarah waited. "Let the HOA dig deeper," she said. "Let them think they were untouchable. They'll show everyone exactly who they are," she said, her voice calm but calculating. It was risky but genius. We played it cool, paid our dues, baked cookies for a meeting, just to make Mrs. Caldwell squirm. The retaliation came quickly. A violation notice scratched into our door, citing our tiny American flag as unauthorized. Then came more: excessive jogging, lawn height violations, all despite our yard being pristine. Sarah didn't flinch. She photographed each notice, her pile of evidence growing thicker. Then, the escalation. Sarah's car keyed, tires slashed, a fake ticket calling her a dangerous driver. But Sarah didn't rage. She smiled, checked her driveway camera. There was Vince, knife in hand, smug under the security light. "Got him," she said, her voice calm but triumphant as she froze his face on screen. Sarah wasted no time. She drafted a report, attaching every file and sending it to the sheriff, news stations, and the DA. But she wanted more than just a legal victory. Sarah didn't just want victory, she wanted public humiliation. She announced a Patriots' Day event at our house, honoring local veterans, and even included her own service in the program. The HOA had no choice but to support it. They couldn't risk being labeled un-American. They promoted it, unwittingly setting the stage for their own downfall. Sarah prepared for the day meticulously. Tents went up, the buffet was set, and the red, white, and blue decor sparkled in the spring sun. News vans arrived, reporters clutching press kits, their cameras scanning the crowd. The neighbors buzzed, some whispering support, while others clearly felt the pressure building. The board arrived, Mrs. Caldwell's smile stiff, Vince nowhere to be seen. Sarah's speech was heartfelt, honoring the veterans in attendance. But then she handed the mic to the reporters. The questions came fast, sharp. They played footage of Mrs. Caldwell plotting behind closed doors, of Vince bullying residents. The room fell into stunned silence. The neighbors gasped. Murmurs quickly turned into open outrage. The board wilted under the pressure. Mrs. Caldwell's apologies were drowned out by the laughter and jeers from the crowd. The deputies arrived shortly after, serving investigation notices. One, oddly enough, was a public thank you to Sarah. The HOA's polished facade crumbled before our eyes. Neighbors, no longer afraid, began chanting for the board to resign. The fallout was immediate and loud. Headlines screamed in bold, unforgiving print. "Fake cop threatens veteran's daughter." HOA ensnared in scandal. Petitions demanding Mrs. Caldwell's ouster flooded in. The board's closed-door meetings were a bust. No one was scared anymore. But they weren't done. A new violation arrived in our mailbox, claiming our event had been unauthorized, despite their own newsletter promoting it. Sarah's laughter echoed through the house as she added the notice to her growing file. Then came the legal threat, accusing us of defamation. Sarah didn't flinch. Her response? A well-crafted letter citing whistleblower laws and referencing her complaint with the DA, mailed with a smile and a smirk that said it all. Vince's harassment didn't stop. Our mailbox was toppled. Trash was dumped on our driveway. Threatening notes appeared on our doorstep. But Sarah had anticipated this. Her cameras caught teens, hired by Vince, vandalizing our property. They confessed under questioning, and Vince was slapped with conspiracy charges. She sent updated evidence everywhere. News outlets, the state HOA regulator. The board scrambled, but they couldn't outrun the truth. In a last-ditch effort to salvage their image, the HOA called a community unity meeting, hoping to spin the narrative in their favor. We sat front and center, watching Mrs. Caldwell as she took the stage. Her words were smooth, but the room was anything but unified. The room unraveled when a reporter, backed by undeniable evidence, cited the board's financial misdeeds. Neighbors shouted in disbelief, some waving sunflower fines, others demanding resignations. The air was thick with tension, and then the chant began. Resign! It built, grew, and shook the walls. Mrs. Caldwell couldn't withstand it. She fled the meeting, crumbling under the pressure, her composure shattered. The neighbors, undeterred, stayed behind, already planning a recall. Sarah watched it unfold, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. She'd predicted every move. Vince, she knew, had scammed other HOAs too, leaving behind a trail of lawsuits. It was only a matter of time. The recall vote was swift and unforgiving. Mrs. Caldwell was ousted, and 4 new board members, honest, trustworthy neighbors, took their place. An audit exposed the slush fund, and the unlicensed patrols were banned. Mrs. Caldwell? She sold her house, slipping away without fanfare, her departure unnoticed. Life in Cedar Grove began to heal. The streets grew quieter, kids played, and flags flew proudly. The fear that had once gripped the community slowly faded into a distant memory. At a community cookout, Mr. Jenkins, an old veteran, raised his glass to Sarah. "She saved Cedar Grove with heart and brains," he said, his voice steady but full of pride. The crowd erupted into applause. Sarah blushed, trying to wave off the attention, but deep down she knew she had earned every bit of it. Later, as the evening cooled, Sarah turned to me. "Fighting's not about being the loudest," she said, her voice calm. "It's about refusing to quit." A month later, the dedication ceremony for the new community park revealed a plaque commemorating the day Cedar Grove reclaimed its spirit. "A community thrives," the inscription read, "when its people stand together." Sarah stood, content, as neighbors crowded around, offering their thanks. They gifted us a sign, a token of appreciation. "Cedar Grove thanks Sarah." It now hung proudly by our garden, a symbol of resilience. Sarah didn't boast. Instead, she planted sunflowers, their faces tilted toward the sun, growing with every passing day. The newcomers? They'd soon hear the story of the jogger who toppled tyrants. And the old-timers? They grinned knowingly, telling the tale. "Let me tell you about the HOA that thought it was in charge." Sarah's smile said it all. She had sown seeds of courage, proving that one woman's quiet grit could spark a revolution.